Awesome. I got it.
Welcome back. How has it been a year? My name is Andrew William Smith, also known as Teacher on the Radio. I blog at www.teacherontheradio.com, and I've had a every other week radio show for 17 years. I was going on 17 years, 16 years. We put out 20 shows in 2023, so not even every week, at 88.5 FM WTTU, The Nest in Cookeville, Tennessee. And this is we're called the Music Nerds, and this is our 2023 Best of the Year 4th annual live stream. And we're going to go around the Hollywood Squares here, the Zoom room, and introduce our co-hosts. To my right, also from Cookeville, Tennessee, Augustus Creeder.
Hi. So, okay, I'll introduce myself. I'm Gus Creeder. I am a music journalist. I've been writing for the Tennessee Tech Oracle newspaper as their copy editor and a columnist for the past year now. And alongside the Cookeville High School Charger newspaper, I've been writing about music for, I guess this is 6 years now, and just keeps getting better and better. And I'm really excited to be here today.
And next up from Birmingham, Alabama.
All right. I'm Scott Winchell, and I am from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm happy to be here. It's good to see friendly faces. I'm happy to be a music consumer. I'm happy to be a listener. I spent a long time in the business. I'm still involved with media, but I'm happy that I get to just sit around and listen to music and not worry about guest lists and per diems and contracts and all of that stuff and radio airplay. So looking forward to the conversation.
And from Nashville, Tennessee, my Sib from another crib wearing his U2 at the Sphere t-shirt that I bought him.
Yes, that's in honor of you, and in mourning for U2 dropping off my top 5 artists on Spotify Rap this year. So I don't know how it happened, but I'm gonna have to work to fix it over the next year. I'm Rick Quinn, and for the past 2.5 years, I have been writing about music and other stuff for popmatters.com, and have enjoyed collaborating with Andrew over the years on all things music, nerdy, etc. And excited to be back in this conversation again. It is indeed the most wonderful time of the year. So.
And formerly of WTTU from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Amy Rock. I just celebrated 10 years living in Nashville, and I love living in Music City. I love supporting the rock scene that's out here, and stoked to be sharing my top list.
And bringing it all back home, the person on the screen I've known the longest. I've known him since 1983, I think, from the Detroit, Michigan area where we're from, but living now in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, I was waiting for you to say my name, but I guess I'll say it. Hey, everybody. Scott Greenberg. I'm the host of Debts No Honest Man Can Pay. We were a radio show for 17 years. For the past 3 years, we've enjoyed a second life as a podcast available almost everywhere you get your podcasts. And I am thrilled to be here with the rest of you for our 4th year. Popcorning it back to you, Andy.
According to our client that I pay a monthly fee to called StreamYard.com, that is StreamYard.com. Check out their executive packages for live streaming stuff that you do. We have about 3 people listening live. Hello, people. And then, of course, we will also create a links of the archived, which should be on Facebook Live and on YouTube right now as we speak. So we have to get started immediately to stay on schedule. And up batting first from Birmingham, Alabama is Scott Winchell. And I'll take everybody else off screen and mute your mics as Scott goes through his top 10 from 2023.
Yeah. All right. I'm really excited about this. For me, we should be celebrating music. And over the last week, or so as everybody's replays and raps from the year came out. I almost got in the rabbit hole on social media where it got real negative. It's like there's some judgment and of people just enjoying music. And I listened to a lot of music, as we all did over the year. And I just, when it came down to coming up with a top list, I could have put 100 on this list in any order and probably been okay. But when it came down to it, it was 10. And so I thought, okay, what did I spend time with? What did I really, really enjoy? What resonated with me? And what did I actually just dig my teeth into on a consistent basis throughout the year? So I'll jump in. And first of all, I want to share my disappointment. One that should have been on the list this year, but wasn't. And we don't have a cover because it didn't come out. And this is my homage. It's the Cure album that didn't come out. And so this is my homage to Robert Smith for the Cure album we did not get that I so wanted. And hopefully we will get it this year. So next year. Top 10. Okay, here we go. Coming in at number 10 is a late comer from the year. I wondered if we'd get any late albums that were really, really good. And we did. There's been several out. But this one, I could not keep it off of the list. Black Pumas, right here. Chronicles of a Diamond. It's their second album. They remind me a lot of Broken Bells, Danger Mouse's group. It's a musician and a producer, and they won 1 billion Grammys their first time around. But every time I start listening to this, it kind of keeps growing on me. And so I'm putting that at number 10 right out of the gate. Number 9, and I'll just preface this. I've looked at some of these lists from magazines and websites, and some of my stuff's on it, some of it's not, but it just doesn't matter. And this is stuff that resonated with me. And the next group is someone who just over the years I've loved, I keep enjoying. They put out good music, they tour relentlessly, and they don't get a lot of notice. And that is a band called Group Love. And here it is, I Want It All Right Now. And they put this album out, did a lot of touring, supported Pink. They're going out next year, and they'll be on tour in Bully, which may show up on someone's list this year. It almost made mine. There is going to support them. But this album just has great songwriting, kind of came out of that indie rock scene that came out around 09, 08, and just kept going. But Group Love, number 9. Number 8 is the Dave Cobb produced Greta Van Fleet, Starcatcher. If you don't remember who Dave Cobb is, he did Southeastern. And this is Greta Van Fleet. I am a huge fan of them, and I know they come with much malignment in the press, but I don't care. They've traveled the world this year to sold out arenas. They're probably one of the top 3 current touring rock bands in the world. And it's kind of funny, all the bands that came out when they did, you don't really hear much about them, but you do hear about this. This is a really, really good conceived songwriting album, a lot of weird mystical stuff going on. And the band and Dave Cobb really put together a lot of great things to take them to the next level musically. Yeah, it does sound a lot like Led Zeppelin, but Led Zeppelin's not around and they're not writing this. So that's my next one. Let's see, that would have been 10, 9, 8, and 7. We had the pleasure of seeing Janelle Monáe this year live in concert and on tour. And The Age of Pleasure is just a phenomenal record. She's like James Brown meets Michael and Janet Jackson all in one, with just this radiant personality that ties it all together. Age of Pleasure is just a great album. I can't show you the gatefold. I think many of you have probably seen it, but just love it. Glad she followed up her last release and some of her acting with a wonderful musical experience, and so she's the next in line. Another of the many, I think half of my list is female artists in the top 10. And I just, out of the first time I saw this artist was when she was just coming out. It was in Nashville. It was for a radio show. It was early in her career. And man, I was just like, man, this is a stripper on stage. It was filthy. It was really early for her. And she's been through a lot. But I think Kesha's Gag Order came out this year and just blew up really, really well. It took her to a maturity level that is just something else. And this is just a wonderful 14-song album. Rick Rubin produced it. Many of you read his book this year. And I'm just really happy to have that on my list. It's great, great music. Kind of a left turn next on my list. I had several rock albums that came out that I just loved. And the one that just took me by surprise and I could not stop listening to in the car is The Hives, The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons. And it's been a long time since this band's put out a record. And it's kind of a funny story with the, you know, who is Randy Fitzsimmons and all of that. You can read about it. But this thing from top to bottom is just a rock and roll festival. It's awesome. It's just upbeat. It's hard. It's good. The lyrics are good and funny. And it's great. So The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons of The Hives. All right. Number 4. This is the only country record that made my top 10, and it's not really a country record as much as it's a bluegrass album. It's great. I cannot say enough about Molly Tuttle, and this City of Gold album is just everything she puts out when she's performing on her Instagram videos and all of that. It's just wonderful. This is a clean record. It sounds great. The instrumentals are just great. The vocals are great. Molly Tuttle. Another band, kind of like Group Love, that I just don't think gets enough love for as long as they've been around is Little Dragon, the Swedish group. And they put out Slugs of Love. This is their umpteenth album. The song Slugs of Love is just really infectious. If you're in Nashville, WNXP's playing it a lot lately. And I'm just really happy to see them put out a great record that's getting a lot of attention. And it's good, top to bottom. There's not a bad song on this. And that's why I put it so high in my list. Last year, I had a lot of getting into jazz and all of that. And that kind of tapered off this year. But when you go in to get a haircut and your barber tells you before he says anything, black classical music, Yusef Daves, and you go and listen to it. And Yusef Daves, he's a great R&B jazz artist. And this is just a wonderful album that has a ton of guests on it. And I highly encourage you to go, and I'll put some of these on my playlist list after the call, but I can't say enough about this record. It's fun. It's interesting. It's different. And so number 1, I don't know if I have to prepare people for this. I don't know if it's going to be a letdown to some or it just doesn't matter. But once in a blue moon, an album comes out from someone that you just say, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. And I think we have one. Andrew Watt, the producer, who's just like done a lot of stuff over the years and has a lot of hits under his belt. He's kind of the thing. Anytime you could take as a producer and take 70-year-old plus guys who've been around as long or longer than the Beatles and make probably one of the best records of their career, I think there's something to be said. And the Rolling Stones put out Hackney Diamonds, and it's phenomenal. There's not a bad song on it. Keith Richards and Mick Jagger write most of it. They've been doing this album in some shape or form for several years and have put it together. It's rashly commercial. It's rashly Rolling Stones. I think it's the funnest, best thing I've heard. And I finally got the other day the Kansas City Royals version of the cover of Hackney Diamonds. They did a special cover for every Major League Baseball team in their rash commercial ways. And this album, one of my favorite songs is Sweet Sounds of Heaven that they did with Lady Gaga, Depending on You. This thing, it has McCartney playing on it. There's a lot of things going on in this record. So #1 of the year for me right there. And again, any of these could go in different order. And there's a lot of stuff that didn't make the list, but it's sitting right over here and they're no less. So I appreciate it. And that's my list. And back to you, Andrew.
Scott, you've come in under your allotable time. Do you want to shout out any of your honorable mentions or shout out any books or TV shows or venues or stand-up comics or anything?
Well, I'd like to just shout out some music. I mentioned earlier Bully. She's from Nashville, and her album was really great. But there's just like a handful. How do you put it in there? I think there's a couple that some would say, well, I can't believe you didn't put Boy Genius and Weather Vanes and all of that in. But they're right there. There were so many good records. And I think Lana Del Rey's record, and it was really, really, really cool. But that's about it. And I'll just wrap up with this. Earlier this year, I went into a giant U2 hole, and I just they were like, Rick, my most listened to artists. And, I went through their catalog a lot, and then they announced the Sphere. And so I know you've already been, but we're flying out on Wednesday and going to see them this weekend, and I can't wait. I'm just like, please, Bono, don't get sick.
Somebody said they saw Bono in the Venetian just walking around on one of the groups, and everybody had to get on the group and they had to explain that's a Bono impersonator. The band has a very serious health bubble. They're not interacting with the public at all. They're doing no autographs.
Yeah.
They're taking their health extremely serious. Last night they got back at it from all reports. The set list was amazing. The obligatory Pogues snippet was there. So Scott Winchell from Birmingham, Alabama, bringing the youngest member of the Music Nerds Collective on screen. Full disclosure, I've known him since he was a wee one. His dad is one of my absolute best friends on the planet Earth. And if we were doing best comic books, best movies, best TV shows, he would take this thing over. I'm so thrilled that you are telling us all about your music taste on the Oracle. And because you're a college student, you have exams, and you said you had to get off the call early to go study for exams, and I support you doing that. So everyone, welcome with his top 10, Gus Creeder.
All right, I'm going to try to open my slides. Yeah. All right. This may take 2 seconds, but it will be there. Well, hope everyone's having a great day. I have my slides, have my presentation. It's time. We're gonna go over my personal top 10 favorite albums of the year. It was a really good year for music. I had a lot of fun listening to it. And some of the albums that are really high on here have really creeped up to be some of my favorite albums since I really have gotten into listening to music all the time. But I'm gonna start off with some honorable mentions. I have Travis Scott's Utopia. It's an amazing album. One of my most listened to albums of the year easily. It's a little all over the place and isn't as consistent as I would love for it to be on my top 10, but it's great. I love these next two are just beautiful albums. Indigo D'Souza's All of This Will End and Mitski's The Land is Inhospitable and So Are We. Just such great listens. I also have the new Geese album, 3D Country. These are kind of some of my favorite rock albums of the year here. Just a really, really fun album. And the next two are very shoegaze inspired, Paranols After the Magic and Hotline TNT's Cartwheel. Just really solid bands, fun albums to listen to that from when I found them continue to stay in my rotation for quite a while. But I'm going to start off with number 10. He's one of my favorite artists who I've found in the past few years, and I've just had such a great time watching him grow and get more and more acclaim. It's Genesis Owusu with his newest record, Struggler. It's a concept album about being a cockroach. That's so cool. And it's well written, so well produced, and just he has such a great personality. He's so much fun to listen to. Leaving the Light, the opener, which was one of the lead singles, is one of the most upbeat and fun songs of the year. And I just had such a great time listening to this album. It continued to stick with me. It came out a little bit later in the year, but it is just excellent. I really recommend it. Next, I have the Jeff Rosenstock album, Hell Mode. I was a little late to listening to this album. This is one of the most recent ones I checked out, like personally, and it is just so good. It's like easily my favorite like pop punk adjacent album I've heard in a long time. And like Three Summers on here is one of the best songs of the year to me. Jeff Rosenstock has such awesome lyricism. It just I can't even describe how much fun it is to listen to. It's beautiful. It's just a really great listen front to back. I highly recommend it. Next is one from a group that I just found this year who didn't debut too much before this year. Group Therapy with their album I Was Mature for My Age, but I Was Still a Child. This is an awesome record. It is like a hip hop and R&B blend with some really great production and excellent performances from three artists who were all child stars. So they were able to come together and treat their friendship and time making music as a type of group therapy, inspiring the name, and really making just one of the most interesting albums of the year. Like when I first found it, I was so surprised I hadn't heard of them yet because it is so up my alley. But yeah, just there are some really hard rap performances, beautiful vocals throughout it whenever they start singing. And yeah, I am definitely going to be keeping my eyes out for what Group Therapy does next. But next I have Tizo Touchdown with his album How Do You Sleep at Night. Tizo, I've been a fan of Tizo since he had around 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And this year, with a massive feature run that he went on and big cosigns from artists like Tyler the Creator and Lil Yachty, even to Travis Scott and Drake being on their albums, he peaked at over 10 million monthly listeners, which is just incredible. I have been a fan of him for so long. He is an incredibly artistic and just in touch with himself individual. And this album, How Do You Sleep at Night, based on a question he receives commonly because of his style of wearing nails throughout his hair. It's campy and it has so many different styles. It shows his true like variety as an artist. And I feel like he's someone who has no limits and will just continue to grow and evolve. And even since I've been a fan, watching him as an underground artist slowly get more and more traction, I can already see how he's evolving and figuring out that using his resources in really interesting ways and collaborating with a lot more people. And anytime that that hip hop or any adjacent genre needs to get a little weird, Tizo has been the first person that people have called, and he's just doing incredible things. He's someone that I think I will always be a fan of just for how true to himself he is. And I will continue listening to this album because it is just so fun. And speaking of fun albums, I have maybe one of the most condensed, weird, and exciting albums of the year from one of my personal favorite groups currently making music. We have 100 gecs with 10,000 gecs. It's the follow-up to their previous album, believe it or not, called 1,000 gecs. And they have just revolutionized whatever it is, this term hyperpop that lives online. So much is supposed to be like the way that I see hyperpop is pushing pop to its extreme, and the way I see 100 gecs is pushing hyperpop to its extreme. They have just a range of sounds throughout this album. It's electronic, there's rap, there's pop, there's ska, there is anything you could want, and it's all weird and messed up, and it is just it's perfect. It's beautiful, and it is like one of the best abstract albums of the year to me. Now entering my top 5, one that I know has gotten a good amount of love in this group, we have Lil Yachty's Let's Start Here. This album was wild to me. I've been a fan of Lil Yachty since probably 2017, and I never could have imagined that he would take the hard right turn into a psych rock inspired project like he has here. Let's Start Here came out near the beginning of the year and has just continued to impress me. Every time that I listen to it, I feel like there's something else that I'm figuring out. He worked with some really incredible producers and just made something that felt really outside of his comfort zone and did it a lot of justice, I would say. He has had a really big influence on pop culture since his inception as an artist, and it's very cool to see how he just the space he fills now with how he is trying everything in his power to change the game and getting a lot of acclaim for it, deservedly so. So my number 4 is going to be what is probably my favorite art pop album of the year. We have Caroline Polachek with Desire, I Want to Turn Into You. Now, if any of you have not listened to Caroline Polachek, you need to listen to Caroline Polachek. She has incredible elastic vocals. I've really never heard another singer that can fill the pockets in a pop song the way that she does. And I'm someone who likes a lot of personality in my music, and I like it to sound like it was very much so made by humans. And the music in here is so pristine and clean and perfect, which usually is a little bit of a turnoff for me as a listener, but not in this situation, because the personality and the lyricism and just the way that she delivers her lines is unlike anyone else making pop music right now to me. And I think she treasure. She used to be a part of the band Stairlit, and I think that ever since she has gone into her own like pop artist solo material era, she's released 2 like nearly perfect pop albums, and Desire, I Want to Turn Into You will continue to stay in rotation for me. Now top three. Number 3, I have King Cruel, one of my personal favorites, with his new album Space Heavy. King Cruel is sort of an acquired taste. I know a lot of people that love him. I know a lot of people that find it sound a little bit too weird and eerie to listen to on a regular basis. But I mean, for me, the emotion is so pure, and the music is just so beautiful. And like I wrote here, alongside yearning vocals and effective bass saxophone, I have all the ingredients I need. Everything that composes this album is exactly what I want to hear Archie of King Cruel doing. And I just had such a fun time listening to this album. Songs like Pink Shell have this incredible bass lines that keep the song driving and create an atmosphere that I don't hear anyone else making anything similar to right now. And I love it, and I'm always looking forward to seeing what King Cruel does next, because he doesn't release too much music, but when he does, it's always quality. So number 2, this is another album that came out later in the year, and one that I did not necessarily expect to be in my top 2 albums of the year. But I mean, I listened to it once and I knew it was going to be in the top 10, and every time I listened to it, it just got higher and higher on the list. It is going to be Sampha's Lehigh. Sampha is an unbelievably talented vocalist. It has popped up across albums from artists like Drake and Kendrick and so many incredible artists, and he always delivers solid performances. And his 2017 album was his debut, and it was great. It has a lot of beautiful moments on it, and here on Lehigh, it just feels more polished, more put together. and it's incredible. It's so beautiful. I wish I could describe it more eloquently, but I just have such a hard time describing this album in particular, because everything is so precise and exactly where it needs to be. Like I feel like there's no way that I can truly describe it that you won't get from just listening to it, because it is that beautiful. But now, at number one, an album that came out a little earlier in the year that I knew I was gonna love. When I first heard it was being released, there was really no other album that I was looking forward to nearly as much as it throughout the year, and it delivered on really all fronts to me. It is going to be the collaborative album between JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown called "Scaring the Hose." Now, one of the first things I love about this album is that it meant that I got to publish the term "scaring the hose" in my school's newspaper, which is just what a joy. But it's kind of mocking the idea of artists in this similar fields to Danny and JPEG Mafia in this experimental hip hop vein, making music that scares the hose. They say you don't want to put this music on in the car; it will scare people. But if you get past the potentially scary surroundings of it, you find that it is just one of the most consistent, fun albums of the year. I mean, Danny Brown is a legendary MC from Detroit. He has multiple classic records under his belt. And on multiple points on this album, it feels like he's falling off of the beats with how tightly he's rapping over them. And it's really incredible. Like, I don't think anyone can find pockets in the way that he finds pockets. And JPEG Mafia is just one of my personal favorite artists right now. He's an incredibly talented producer. He made the entire album on a Roland SP404, which is no longer, most people do not use to make music anymore, an old drum machine and sampler. And it has a very vintage feel with an aesthetic that's similar to like an old blaxploitation kind of movie, and it works on all levels for me. I think they're two incredible artists. They have amazing chemistry, and this album I listened to the entire year. It never got boring, and I highly recommend it. It's a little out there, but it has some of the most impressive production, rapping, everything from any album I've heard this year. And yeah, that is my top 10. I've been really looking forward to doing this all year, genuinely, and I hope that you all enjoy the recommendations. And I'm so excited to get to dive into that playlist that we're making, because I mean, we've been through one list already and I loved it. I thought it was an excellent list. So I can only imagine how fantastic everyone else's are going to be. So thank you so much for
in our last 2 minutes that you have, Gus, any more shout outs, honorable mentions, comments on?
Yeah, totally.
I'll want to comment on Scott's list. Anything else?
Well, Scott's list was excellent. There were multiple albums on there that I've enjoyed this year, and other ones that I've been meaning to enjoy this year that you put back in my brain so that I can check them out. Yeah, I will shout out both my parents for putting me onto so much incredible music with their careers and incredible taste. I'm going to give a shout out to my roommate Jack. He's one of our viewers right now. I'm so grateful he's watching. And also some of the music I've been listening to recently that is not from this year. I cannot get enough of Labi Siffre. I have listened to multiple albums from him, like for the past few months. I can't stop. He's an incredible talent, and I highly recommend anyone check him out if you haven't. Maybe the best jazz guitarist ever. I've been listening to a lot of Marvin Gaye. I've been listening to a lot of Bobby Caldwell, rest in peace. And it's been a really inspiring year for finding new music and even finding new old music, especially. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a good year so far.
Gus, thank you so much. Good luck on finals. I'll see you around town. Keep the Oracle legit. I'm enjoying your columns very much. One of the founders of this live stream and a dear friend of mine, we're bringing to the screen Rick Quinn. Unmute your mic, Rick. You're muted. There we go. All right, and I'm going to let you let it rip, Rick Quinn. And he writes for Pop Matters. It is an amazing website. If you've never been to Pop Matters, check it out. If you've never read any of his reviews, please check out the reviews. You can even search at Pop Matters by Rick Quinn. Take it away, brother.
All right, man, those were two stellar lists to follow up. I'm going to see if I can overcome the generation gap and also use technology like Gus did. Let's see. I'm going to try to pull up my slides here from. Hold on a second. Nope. More time here.
There's a button at the bottom that says present, and it's got a little plus sign.
I got it.
Okay.
And now I'm trying to get into my account and allow.
It wouldn't be DIY anything without technology.
It would not. It would not. So anyway, this has been an incredible year of listening, music. Let's see. It tells me it is processing this, so we will see. But I'm going to say that right off the bat, this is a purely subjective list, but I think that is that's just a recognition that music is about what brings us joy. And here are some of the things that brought me joy this year. I'm going to start off with the first of our repeats, Molly Tuttle's City of Gold, which was on Scott's list, is, like he said, an absolutely fantastic album of bluegrass. She is a virtuoso in her technique as well as her songwriting. This album is all over the place. It starts off with El Dorado, which is an imaginative journey that she had from a field trip that she took as a child in California to the gold rush sites of California. This is inflected with bluegrass from Appalachia, as well as the psychedelic roots of Jerry Garcia and the West Coast, the Palo Alto area where Molly grew up. There are standard bluegrass tunes on here. A murder ballad, which deals with an unexpected pregnancy and a cold lover who lets his betrothed just sort of twist in the wind and all of this. It's a magnificent album, and she is great. If you ever get a chance to see her live, do it. I caught her set at Bonnaroo this year, and it was electric. She and her band, fantastic. Number 9 is Lana Del Rey's Do You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? There is a line in Taylor Swift's song that she does with Lana Del Rey on Midnights, Snow on the Beach. And I'll give you the radio edit of how she describes snow on the beach. Weird, but freaking beautiful. And that really sums up this album. It is strange. It's not one of those things that you're going to pop into the CD player or crank up on your Bluetooth and just drive down the road on. It is ethereal. It's moody. It's experimental. There's a track on here that's called the Judah Smith Interlude, which is kind of a weird amateur recording of a sermon with sort of laughter from Lana Del Rey and whoever's sitting with her. It's an odd little thing, but this album, the strengths of it are her voice, the songwriting, the continuing dealing with personal trauma, American life, and where is beauty in the midst of all this. It's summed up with, there's a song called Kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of mixing broken pottery with gold where the cracks are visible. It's part of the beauty of sort of presenting the ways in which vulnerability and our brokenness are places where, as she says in the song, where the light gets in. And so that is a great, it's just one of those albums that caught me by surprise this year. Number 8 is Depeche Mode's Memento Mori. I'm going to start off this with a confession that I did not listen to Depeche Mode back in the day or over the years. It's just one of those groups that was on my radar, but not in my frequent listens. I was truly grabbed by this album. It was written and produced and put together in the wake of the unexpected death of Andy Fletcher, one of the founding members of Depeche Mode, and it's just a reminder of some of the things about 80s new wave post-punk music that was so good. The industrial metal sounds, synths, drum machines, etc. And then throughout, it's a reflection on the limits of life, the impending end for all of us. But what does that mean? How do we submit to the mystery? Where chaos and order. It's fascinating for the brain. It's wonderful for the ear. It was just a really interesting album. So that was number 8. Number 7 is an album that caught me by surprise. It was not on my radar. I was not familiar with the art pop group U.S. Girls, but Bless This Mess is again, it's one of the most compelling albums of the year. I just want it has. I'm just gonna. If you were to walk into a record store and say, I want to listen to some music that's laced with some infectious beats, but maybe it wrestles with the paradox of intimacy and deals with technology and in a pandemic haunted world, but has a sort of a solid gold. I'm dating myself here. I'm talking about Solid Gold, the variety show from the 70s, which is right in the disco era. If it had those vibes, but it has but also it had a messy, embodied feminism. If you were to sort of dump all those ingredients out to a clerk at a store, they might respond to you if they were aware of this album with Bless This Mess, which is U.S. Girls, which is the stage name for Meg Remy. This album was conceived and produced right within the pandemic, at the same time that she became pregnant with twins and delivered them. It's all about embodiment, connection, disconnection, technology in our society. It's experimental, it's creative, it's a wild listen, but I loved it. So that's number 7. And number 6 is Allison Russell's sophomore album, The Returner. Allison Russell is continuing to emerge as one of the premier voices and artists within Americana. This album is just powerful and sort of reeks with resilient joy. If you're familiar with her previous album, which really dove starkly into her own history of trauma and abuse by a stepfather, and sort of wrenching herself from that. This album comes out of that and continues to embrace that experience, but speaks to the joy and resiliency that she has and that art provides for her. There is a track on here called Eve is Black, which is just a profound rumination on racism and the ways in which a white supremacist society twists and goes at things. But in the midst of it, she is claiming her voice. Again, this is just a great one. So, all right. So moving straight along. Number 5, The Rise and Fall of Midwest Princess. This is Chapel Roan. This is just a fun, infectious pop album that was not, again, took me by surprise. Great album. Weather Vanes by Jason Isbell, the 400 unit. Number 4, what can I say? Isbell's songwriting, the music here, fantastic. Number 3 is Margot Price, Strays. This is her best work to date. Cosmic American music, just wonderful Americana. Number 2, Proof of Life by Joy Aladakun. Just one of the most stunning albums I've listened to this year. Fantastic. Full of the breadth of life and great collaborations across the board. Number 1 is The Record by Boy Genius. This is by far my favorite album of the year. Lyrical depth, beautiful harmonies. It's just powerful, top to bottom. I love this album. I think it's a landmark album, and that is my list.
Rick, I didn't mean to rush you too much. You still, I was at the pace you were going on your first 5. You would have not gotten through your second 5, but now you rushed through your second 5. Anything else you want to say about these last 5 records?
Well, I will say this: the Chapel Roan album is like, for me, is what Wet Leg was last year. It's just an absolutely fun album. It's not, I'm not in its demographic, but I absolutely enjoyed it. It is full of humor, pathos, and it is a great album. Joy Aladakun's album is, again, I think she is one of the most powerful emerging artists that are that's working here in Nashville. And I don't know. And I could go on and on and on about the Boy Genius album, but I won't, because that is it. I would really take up all the time that I have. So
I saw the most overlaps with you of everybody probably I'm going to see all day. Was it hard to not put Weather Vanes higher or lower, or?
I think that I love Weather Vanes. It is a stunning album. Maybe Margot and Jason flip, but I feel my first 2 have been solid for quite a while.
I was expecting the Boy Genius. I tried to get into it. It's not my thing, but I love it. I love the diversity on these lists, and ours are probably the closest proximity we're going to see all afternoon. And thank you so incredibly much. I did follow the Scott Greenberg rule. It turns out, and we'll get to that when we get to mine in just a minute. You've got a 60 seconds. You want to shout out anybody that didn't make your top 10?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm drawing a blank, my friend.
Well, Rick, so, I didn't mean to throw you off with the time.
No, you didn't. You didn't. Okay. I appreciated it.
Everybody, you guys have 15 minutes each. How you spend that 15 minutes, if you want to talk about your favorite dog treats, it's up to you. All right, Rick, I love you, my brother. I'm going to take over the reins here. If you can pull your slideshow, keep yourself on, but pull the slideshow screen. I think that'll make it easier. According to our random sorting hat, I am up next. I was the convener of this thing, but I want to make sure with Scott Winchell, Scott Greenberg, and Rick Quinn. It wasn't hard to convene this thing. And then when Amy Rock got on board, I mean, that the five of us have been here since the beginning. And then we got Gus on board right after that. Did Amy come in second year or first year? I think she was the first year. So I think we've got a solid 5 from all 4 years. I'm going to pull up my my slideshow. Let's see here. Oh, what is it doing? Let's see. Oh, come on. I see what you're saying, Rick, about how it took you all these buttons you had to, I didn't realize I would have pressed those buttons a lot sooner. And I think Gus had the same. Thing with his. All right, here it comes. All right, Teacher on the Radio, best albums of 2023. So I liked where Rick put subjective in his first slide. I think with the hyper pop and the rap, and I'm sorry he had to go study, but Gus clearly leaned into his tastes. He didn't feel obligated to hit every genre. So I've always been a rock guy. I've always been a dad rock guy. I'm very much Gen X, as a couple of my friends on this call are. And so you're not going to be surprised at some of the dad rock, kind of like mid-rock sort of literary rock that we're going to see here. I've also been into Americana for several years, but this is the year that Sunfrog Smith went full country, like pop country. You're going to see a few surprises in here for that. And we are going to go ahead and start with number 10. This took me completely by surprise. I had tickets for the Opry for Adeem, the artist, and I felt so uncomfortable in the Opry building. And I was so worried that Adeem was going to get harassed by the crowd. I didn't feel like I was in my element. I felt like it was all tourists and very kind of like, I don't know, there's something about the polishedness to the television version of the Opry that made me uncomfortable. We had amazing seats, but we left at intermission, and I'm kicking myself for not staying for Jelly Roll. I had not heard his record yet. And I probably would not even have tried this until a dear music journalist who I met in Murfreesboro at MTSU called Sean Maloney. He's written a book for the 33 and a third series. He's one of the editors for the 33 and a third series. And even though he lives in Boston, Massachusetts, he still writes for the Nashville scene. He put out a cover story on Jelly Roll after he got Best New Artist at the CMAs. I went and read the article, and I was so moved by this article. And the album is more country than rap. He's a country rap hybrid, but it was about going to jail, being addicted to drugs, and finding Jesus. 3 of my favorite topics. I've spent more time into Jesus than I have on drugs or in jail, but I have experience with addiction and incarceration as well. One of the programs that my friends and I started here in town is we give pen pals and donations, commissary donations to people who live in the joint. And as I was telling my students, and I don't mean this in any bad way, there's just certain careers you have to look for if you have facial tattoos where you're actually going to make a good paycheck. And one of them is country rap. Superstar. This album, Witsit Chapel, it's all hooks. It's hooks from front to back, and it literally obliterated me. I mean, I was destroyed by this album. Freaking love Jelly Roll. On Wilco release day, I've been increasingly getting into Wilco for the last 4 years since my friend and huge Wilco fan, Kurt Eisen, died of cancer. Speaking about addiction, Jeff Tweedy's story about overcoming pills, as described in his first book, it blew my mind. And I started going to Wilco as a way to deal with long-term grief for a dear friend and coworker, Dr. Kurt Eisen, my former supervisor at the university where I'm lucky enough to have a job. And I've always been a Sky Blue Sky guy, and then I just dabble in all the other albums. I really like Uncle Tupelo. I love Sun Volt. This album didn't grab me the first listen, and I set it aside. And then I was feeling like I needed to run away from Cookeville and escape to another city to go on a concert. And I saw that Wilco was playing in St. Louis. I spent about 2 weeks listening to everything Wilco, including this album, and then listening to a million Wilco podcasts and going on all the Wilco fan pages and watching the Wilco documentary and just becoming completely consumed with Wilco. Cousin is a phenomenal album. Jeff Tweedy and his lineup that's been the steady lineup now since around Sky Blue Sky, or the one before the album before that, the name is escaping me. This was produced by Kate LeBone. There's some kind of twinkly, weird things in there, but it's It's American folk rock, dad rock. And adjacent to Wilco is sad dad rock. And that, of course, brings us to this album. 2 albums by The National came out this year. But I went with the one that has Frankenstein in the name, and I'm completely going to lose my mind and not be able to say the complete name. Let me look at the notes here. The album that has Frankenstein in the name is First 2 Pages of Frankenstein. It came out in April, and this is sad dad rock. And Matt Berenger is a particular kind of lyricist. He's a particular kind of frontman. I mean, I think there's elements of Morrissey here. There are elements of Radiohead. This is a band that also has some psychedelic elements, but they're subtle. There's pop elements. They've collaborated with Taylor Swift multiple times. Their second album, Laugh Track, that they released this year, which is in my maximal list of 130 albums that I'm going to publish tomorrow, has Roseanne Cash doing a duet. They put on absolutely stunning live shows. There's a track on there, like something about like you're not friends with your mind. Matt Berenger has dealt with mental health and self-care issues. I did say they are sad dad rock. They are also dealt with writer's block. He said he couldn't write lyrics, you know, and he wasn't sure he would even be able to put out this album because he couldn't write any lyrics. And then he put out 2 albums in a year. The live show at the Ascend Amphitheater was so worth every dime and all the gas and the time it took me to get there. I just freaking love The National. I freaking love this album. And getting into The National and the Wilco this year is a part of the whole theme of my top 10 and the whole theme of Rick with the subject. Just love what you love, get into what you get into. Anyway, I'm just absolutely, and either the Wilco album or the National album could have been higher. And these are bands that I'm going to increasingly become a super fan of. I want to stay with these bands for the long haul. I got first turned on to this group by a recommendation at a My Morning Jacket fan club. They're called Susto. They're out of South Carolina. Justin Osborne, I believe, is the name of the singer. And their album that they came out with this year is called My Entire Life. And it is at that sweet spot for me. As much as I love the country and the folk and the Americana, it's where it really intersects with rock and psychedelia that all of my buttons go off. They have this amazing song on this that I just played on the radio show this morning called Hyperbolic Jesus. The line is something along these lines, Rick. I don't believe in Jesus, but I've heard he's a really nice guy. Incredible live show, almost bordering on like dance rock. But this photograph is from actually seeing them in a very small venue. Jeannie and I drove many, many hours in the rain to Macon, Georgia. We almost were late to the show that night. If it actually had not been a rain delay at the concert, we might have missed seeing them. Absolutely love Susto. Absolutely love this new record. Their live show is absolutely incredible. My Entire Life by Susto came out in July. First overlap with my brother Rick is Margot Price. Strays came out. I love County Road, the song County Road. I love I've been to the mountain and back. I mean, I love her lyrics so much. I love what she represents, who she is as a force for good in Nashville, Tennessee. And then I read her memoir, and I felt like I know her like at a personal level. When I went to the show at the Ryman, she made some comment about I'm not leaving Nashville. I'm going to fight for pro-choice in a state where abortion is now illegal. And then somebody in the crowd shouted out expletive, the name of our governor, and the crowd just went wild. She was protesting with the Justins when they were banned from the Congress of Tennessee. I got a very DIY lo-fi version of her singing a folk song with a bunch of other Nashville folk stars that it got picked up by NPR. Teacher on the Radio got featured on National Public Radio via Ann Powers in her column. Margot's memoir, Margot's 2 albums. She put out Strays 1 and Strays 2 in 2023. Mad for Margot Price. Incredible songwriting, incredible lyrics. The song Lydia deals with the whole pro-choice issue. I think on that Molly Tuttle, and Molly Tuttle is in my 130 list, but not my top 10, also dealing with being a Tennessean and dealing with, being a progressive woman in country music in Tennessee. Love Margot, love Molly Tuttle. This one is in that same area, but way below the radar for most people. If I did not belong to several Americana groups online, I would never have even heard of this. My friend Bryce in the I'm Going Where There's No Depression Americana group, which is one of the friendliest Facebook music groups that I have ever been in, which I absolutely love, turned me on to this. And this reminds me, Scott Greenberg, of early Maria McKee, early Lone Justice, fierce, loud, rowdy. And this is a unapologetically feminist album in terms of old school second wave feminism from the 70s. And that seems to have hit a sweet spot with me. I was raised by old school free to be feminists, and clearly the feminist album of 2023 is Natalie Merchant's Keep Your Courage. The song Sister Tilly, which is a tribute to older women of like the 60s and 70s, brought tears to my eyes seeing her twice this summer. I just can't say enough about what a genius and what a compassionate person. She's almost a little bit too like real. And she takes off her shoes and dances around the stage in her sock feet, and she, lets her hair turn gray and and she's just a regular human being, but she has a craft, bordering into the orchestral pop. She actually, the second time we saw her, she played with a full and complete orchestra. Natalie Merchant, originally of 10,000 Maniacs, is just such a genius. Oh, and I saw the actual 10,000 Maniacs later on in the year, wanting to have that experience. They're not as good. I mean, bless their hearts. They're trying really hard. And I love the old songs. And that's what I got to see when I saw 10,000 Maniacs, Scott, with Joe Guinness, by the way, a few weeks ago. But they can't hold a candle to what Natalie Merchant's doing. Another sleeper, if I would not been on these Americana groups, where every Friday I get recommendations that I never would have even thought of listening. Steven Wilson Jr.'s album, Son of Dad, almost number one. Completely blows my mind. They call him Death Cab for Country. He's got a punk kind of indie sensibility, a lot of religious metaphors, but not overtly religious. Like some of the music, I do like some music that has overt religion in it, but this is subtly religious. He's got a song about grief for his father. Son of Dad is a tribute album to his father and his family of origin. It's like 120 minutes. It's unreal what this guy is capable of, and he's got this deep voice. He has this song about living in the 90s that I don't know. I mean, I could listen to this. I need to listen to this thing 100 more times. But when I'm getting now into the top three, we're getting really into this. I mean, I just listened to so many guys, sad country dudes that didn't even make the top 10. There's so many more. Charles Wesley Godwin, Drayton Farley, Gabe Lee. My 130 list is just chock full. Wyatt Flores, just chock full of these guys. There's so much happening in dude folk right now. I just can't get enough of it. But Steven Wilson Jr., unbelievable lyricist, unbelievable craftsman, Son of Dad. It maybe this is the album that kind of hit me like a Deems album did last year, Rick. This is the album that just reconstructed my inner chemistry. Number two is Zach Bryan. I've already talked about the self-titled album a little bit in our group. Zach Bryan is a major pop star. He's selling out football stadiums, and he's basically a folk singer, but he has a full band. I saw him at Pilgrimage, and his full band thing is realer than real. He is everything and then some. Can't get enough of Zach Bryan, and that self-titled, the duet with the War and Treaty in particular. I'm just and I almost got on board with the album he came out with last year, but I discovered it too late in the year, and it was so long I didn't understand exactly what he was trying to do. But this self-titled, like the first spin, I remember messaging Rick the day the album came out. I'm like, are you listening to this? This is really freaking me out how good it is. Also great duets on that record. War and Treaty, I mentioned, also the Lumineers, Casey Musgraves. And then he later on came out with a duet with Noah Kahan. So like the indie folk superstars, Noah Kahan and Zach Bryan, they're like the story of the year to me. Is like the revenge of folk as well as the revenge of Dad Rock. And in my remaining 50 seconds, everybody knows that my #1 album of the year is Jason Isbell and the 400 Units Weather Vanes, because I pulled a Scott Greenberg, who says that every year, if Springsteen comes out with an album, it's automatically #1. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use all of this, science, of which I don't understand how science or math works. But I just looked at the way I listened and the way I felt, and certain songs like King of Oklahoma, Middle of the Morning, When We Were Close. I could just go through this thing, Cast Iron Skillet. I can just go through Volunteers, front to back, backwards, forwards, upside down. Jason Isbell is my main man. Saw him multiple times, got tickets to see him in 2024. I'm a groupie. I'm a super fan. I am all bought in to Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, and I've completely used up all of my time. And Amy Rock, I don't see her icon. Hope she is.
I'm here.
There she is. All right, Amy, let me take my slideshow. Figure out how to take my slideshow out.
I'm working on bringing my slideshow up, so give me just a second to do mine.
And I ended right on time, so well, that's not good, because now I'm into your time. So
no worries.
I won't penalize you. And I rushed. I think I rushed everybody else. I tried to talk really fast, and I still used up my time.
No, there's just so much to talk about. I feel like I have jam-packed my list with so much to talk about that I'm going to try and rush through all the wonderful things I'm going to be presenting for you.
Take it away, Amy.
Rock and roll. All right. This is my top 10 albums and more. I'm going to start the top of my list with shouting out some of my best friends. I'm representing my friend Ben here at my top number 10. His band is Hold My Headache. These are some weird rock and roll songs, super heavy. And he just represents weirdo culture in such an amazing way. He writes songs for himself only, and it really shows. He did a album release show this past winter, and it was so much fun. He's now based in upstate New York, in Jamestown, New York. And this summer I went and got to see him play in his hometown, and it was so much fun. And I got to see his kitty cats. It was great. But anyways, This Is For Someone Who Is Weird by Hold My Headache is my number 10. And number 9 is some of my other all-time favorite friends here in Nashville. Their band is called Year of October, Josh and Felicia, and their drummer, James. They released the album Keep On Fighting this year, and it is super rockin'. They describe themselves like, I'm gonna get my notes out. Her voice is really cool. It's like Amy Winehouse, and then they're almost like Black Sabbath-y. Just such a vibe, so much energy. They've been touring out more, and they also just started a record label called Watch Them Burn, and Watch It Burn, and they actually are releasing some of my other best friends' album, Taxiway. So I'm gonna give them a honorable mention. This Is Permanent is the second full-length album by Taxiway. Very atmospheric, started as a bedroom project for Michael Arand during 2020. And one more bonus shout out for some of my best friends here in Nashville. Joe Dangerous. He writes songs under the Dangerous Method. They released this album this year, which they recorded at the 5 Spot during COVID times. That's why it's called Live for No One. And it's just really cool to have that. But yeah, shout out to all my Nashville friends. It's been such a highlight of my year, going out to see shows and watch my friends play. All right, down to number 8. Which this might look familiar. Gus stole this one from me, but I think that's all the recommendation you need. Both Amy and Gus love Jeff Rosenstock. Hell Mode is just a great album. I've been a Jeff Rosenstock fan for years and years. I saw him on his super DIY tour with the band Bomb the Music Industry in like the back room of Cafe Coco in like 2010. And there was like 20, 30 kids in there, and we were moshing super hard. And it's just super raw punk rock, and hearing an album from Jeff where he's, mature, living today's life, but still feeling that like punk rock angst is just really hit me right this year. So Jeff Rosenstock, Hell Mode. That was my number 8. Number 7 is Joey Valence and Bray. Listen, I'm not old enough to have gotten to see the Beastie Boys live. So the closest thing to that experience was this spring at Shaky Knees Festival. It was so fun. The energy in that pit was crazy. The show started with the DJ playing like some random songs like Party in the USA, and we're like, what? And then the director of the festival came out and introduced them, and it was super rowdy. Joey's pants were falling off, and it was just a really fun pit to be in. It's just like Beastie Boys, but I mean that as a compliment. I think some people might do that as a slam, but it's just really fun hip hop energy. And that's Joey Valence and Bray, Punk Tactics. Next, I think that's number 6, is The Dirty Nil, Free Rein to Passions. This was a show this summer that one of my friends, I want to say, discovered them on TikTok or whatever and invited me to come see the show. I didn't know anything about them, and I went, and it was just a really fun show. My review after seeing it was like, they're kind of in between genre band, a little hardcore, a little post grunge, a little glam, something for all the girls, something for all the boys. The singer was chewing bubble gum the whole show. And at the encore, he came out and said, "This is Thrashville," and then popped a huge bubblegum bubble. And then they played a killer song. The whole crowd got moshing, and then closed out with Alice Cooper's School's Out, with the opening band joining them on stage. So just rowdy fun, kind of throwback post grunge vibes. Just really fun rock and roll album. That was a fun surprise to discover this year, The Dirty Nil. All right. I'm throwing in an honorable mention for Jason Isbell and the 400 unit. Weather Vanes was awesome. Death Wish is on my playlist. It's a good album, and I'm not going to deny that. And it would probably be ranked on this list if I didn't know that all 5 of the rest of y'all also had it on your list. And I'm putting that up here because my next one is my spicy hot take of what I think is one of my favorite albums. I added it to my summer playlist as a, maybe we'll just see what this is like. The funny band that had the Eurovision song that was the cover of the Four Seasons Beggin'. I liked that song. It was fun. Wonder what the album's like. These silly Italians. I love it. It's so much fun. It doesn't commit to one genre for any song, and it's a little sexy, and it has a song that has a Tom Morello solo on it for some reason. The 2 out of 10 review on Pitchfork that this album got sarcastically asked if we want more phoned in Tom Morello solos. And to that I say, yes, please give us more phoned in Tom Morello solos. He deserves it. All the Tom Morello, he's my all-time favorite guitarist. So whenever I hear him, it is such a treat. Look how much fun he's having hanging out with the band. My roommate called me in where she was watching some K-pop music videos, and she's like, "Who is this white guy doing a solo in my K-pop video?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Tom Morello." So, anyone who's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, do that. Enjoy that. So that's Måneskin Rush. It's my number 5 album, and you can fight me on it. All right. This is my number 4 is the only dance music album on my list this year, which, if you know me, is a little surprising. Usually I have some house and trance mixed in, but it was still on my playlist. It always was playing in the background while I'm working. But the energy I put into discovering new music this year went towards punk rock and these other bands I'm going to get to at my very top here. So James Blake has been a favorite since like 2010, his self-titled album, his cover of Limit to Your Love. And this album kind of gets back to his roots. Earlier this year, I went down this rabbit hole, kind of learning about the songs he released even before that, and about the origins of dubstep, the kind of South London early 2000s scene that was real dubstep before Skrillex took it over and made it bro step with the robot sounds and the heavy drops. Before that, it was very atmospheric and groovy. Dubstep comes from two-step and dub, like reggae dub. And yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk about dubstep. So the James Blake album gets back to the roots, playing robots into heaven. It just really cool atmosphere. Another Grammy nom. Is very good. And that'll lead into my dubstep honorable mentions. Skrillex released 2 separate albums this year because he'd been kind of out of commission for a while. And they're awesome. They have some really cool guests on it. And he really is the best dubstep producer on the scene today. And they're just really fun dance songs. And while I was doing the deep dive into the origins of dubstep, this album, Untrue by Burial, that came out in 2007, that made it onto my Spotify top list. So I thought I'd give it a little shout out because it's so atmospheric. It really just scratches the inside of my brain and made me feel very cozy whenever I had it on in my headphones. So those are my dubstep honorable mentions. All right, we're to my top 3 now. We have Tegan and Sara, Crybaby. I've been a Tegan and Sara fan for a very long time. I finally got to see them live at the Ryman this summer, and it was just so cool to see them in person and hear them talk about what it was like to come up as artists and come up as queer artists in, the 2010s, where that really was like, people didn't know, the record labels didn't know what to do with them and were like dressing them all girly, which wasn't really what they're like. And they actually this year also released a really cute youth graphic novel called Junior High. And there's a kind of fictionalized version of the twins and shows them being 13 and just figuring out what friendship and being a person is like. And a coming of age graphic novel is like my favorite thing. So that really hit for me and made me happy. And this album has a lot of fun, upbeat, danceable songs like the rest of their catalog. And it makes me super happy. On to number 2, Ben Folds. I also got to see him at the Ryman this summer. I hadn't been back to the Ryman since COVID. So in June, I did 3 Ryman shows in as many weeks. It was Tegan and Sara, Ben Folds, and Diarrhea Planet. And I was over the moon. It was such a fun thing to do this summer. But the Ben Folds show is probably my favorite. I also had never seen a Ben Folds solo show. I know I lived in Nashville for 10 years and haven't gotten around to just seeing Ben Folds play a solo show. But it was worth the wait, getting to hear him play the songs on this album. A lot of them were ones he composed over COVID times where he had his fans send in like news articles and he'd make a song that's kind of inspired by the headlines. And just hearing him tell the stories about the songs and perform them. The backing band is the band Tall Heights he had playing with them, and they did a full opening set, and it was really good. And yeah, I love Ben Folds. It was so good to see him, and this album has a lot of great story songs like we've come to know and love from him. All right. My number 1 album, Gus stole from me as his number 10, Genesis Owusu, Struggler. Again, if Gus likes them, I'll recommend them too. This album I kept turning on over and over on my headphones this year. It just gets me amped up. It's so cool. I was just reading about who Mr. Owusu is. He's 25 years old. He's originally from Ghana, but came up from Canberra, Australia. And it's just impossible to pin down what genre this music is. It's a little post-punk, a little rap and R&B, some funk and new wave, a little psych rock. It's all over the place, but just really jams. I was in love with it from the first time I heard Get Inspired on WNXP. I know Scott Winchell was shouting out WNXP as well, and that's been probably my favorite place to discover new music lately, is just catching what new stuff they're premiering over there. That's my number one album. Check it out, Genesis Owusu Struggler. And that's it for me. Here's a little collage of some of my music memories when I did Back Porcharoo. I watched Bonnaroo on my back porch, did Barbenheimer with my friends, Shaky Knees Festival with my friend Caitlin. My brother came and visited, and I was celebrating my 10-year anniversary of living in Nashville.
Which was such an amazing party. Everyone, Amy Rock, and I met when she was just a student at Tech, kind of where Gus is now, 10 years ago or more. And the radio station, WTTU, was so blessed to have her doing her show there for a few years. And we now have just one more person left to go on this show, and it's great that it's going to be you. He has an amazing podcast called Debts No Honest Man Can Pay. We're both from the D, living in the South, two Detroit boys living in the South. Scott, take us home, brother.
Two Detroit boys living in the South sounds like the beginning of the greatest joke I've never heard. Hey, everybody, Greenberg here. Before we get started, shout out to the newest member of the Music Nerds Collaborative and one of my oldest and dearest friends, and an old and dear friend of Andy's, Mr. Joe Guinness. Unfortunately, he's not with us today, but I'm looking forward to a year from now hearing Joe's top 10, which brings us to my top 10. Every year, I torture myself, and I think back in the old days when my top 10 was easy because I could only afford to buy 10 albums. But with great earning power comes great responsibility. And this year, I feared that either I had lost my soul or my capacity to feel joy, but I pulled it out, and I got a top 10, and I'm ready to share it with you. So number 10, the list starts with some recency bias. This dropped in October. I wasn't expecting to dig it as much as I do, and I can say that about a lot of the records on this year's list. I'm a big fan of his band. This is his second solo album. Wasn't expecting to dig this as much as I do. The first couple of advanced singles were great, but within 2 or 3 days, I gave several spins to A Savage's several songs about fire. The A stands for Andrew. Andrew, of course, his day job is as the principal songwriter and frontman of Parquet Courts. I love the sound of his voice. I love the arrangements on here. I love the melodies. The only reason this isn't higher is because of recency bias, and I'm sure that a year from now, I might kick myself and go, why didn't I have the album higher? Another trend for me is so much music, so little time, and my time management skills are not always at the top of their game, which is why it took me several months to get caught up with Lucky for You from Bully. It dropped in June. I didn't listen to it until September, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's lean and mean, 10 songs. I love short albums, and this one is punchy AF. Alicia Boniano, aka Bully, got her start, cut her teeth as an intern for indie rock legend Steve Albini, and it shows. She's mastered that quiet, loud, quiet dynamic, made famous by the likes of Pixies and Nirvana, and this gives out strong 90s alt rock vibes. I'm thinking in terms of Veruca Salt, Bully. Number 9, she's going to be touring with Craig Finn and the Mountain Goats. And I just found out last night that some good friends of mine got me tickets for it, which makes me very happy because I am currently in between the day jobs and cannot afford to buy tickets. So I love my friends. Number 8, another album I wasn't expecting to love as much as I do. Never heard any of their music until this year. And that is Let's Start Here from Lil Yachty. Never heard a lick of his earlier music. As a matter of fact, the very first time I heard of Lil Yachty was when he made an appearance in a TV commercial. And I thought, oh, is that like a character or something? And I was like, I learned later, it's like, oh, that's a real dude. I thought it was just like they made up a name of like a fake hip hop dude to put in the commercial. But this album is just psychedelia. I'm so happy that I have this on vinyl. It is a treat for my brain on Friday and Saturday nights to put this on and to just chill out on the couch. It is an immersive listening experience. Got to see him bring these songs to life recently. And while I'm not as familiar with his earlier, more hip hop leaning stuff, he was great. And this stuff holds up well live, but I'm thrilled to know that for years to come, whenever I feel the stress of life just threatening to pound down my door, I can put on Let's Start Here and just forget it all for a while. Which brings us to number 7, from the file marked Sometimes You Can Go Home Again, the first album in 38 years from Rain Parade. Now, Rain Parade were part of this scene back in the mid-'80s called the Paisley Underground, alongside the likes of the 3 O'Clock, Dream Syndicate, and a little band that you may have heard of called the Bangles. Now, back in the 80s, Rain Parade had 2 albums and 1 EP. Ironically, it was their last LP, Crash and Dream, that my friend Joe Guinness introduced me to, is one of my all-time favorites. And when I heard that Rain Parade had a new album coming down the pike, I was nervous. Sometimes, you know, you're excited when your favorite bands get back together and they drop a new record, but you're always like, do they still got it? They got it. The album's called Last Rays of a Dying Sun, and is just, if you like that psychedelic stuff, right up your alley. Number 6, not only did I not expect to love this record as much as I did, I didn't even know who these guys were. The guys, not really guys, but people. I got to stop saying guys. You know, it's the colloquialism that I've been just socialized to go to, and I need to stop that. So apologies. But these 3 young people, straight out of Melbourne, Australia, they're called Cable Ties. And this is their 4th album. No, their 3rd album. And we saw them at Hopscotch this past fall. And they were playing several shows at Hopscotch. We went to see them on day 1 at one of the day parties. Didn't have any idea that what we were seeing was their US live debut. 3-piece guitar, bass, and drums. Front person, singer, songwriter, guitarist Jenny McKechnie is a force of nature, a ball of fire. She shreds on the guitar. And the rhythm section of Shauna Boyle and Nick Brown, tighter than an industrial strength rubber band. 9 songs on this thing. Again, have I mentioned how much I love short albums? 9 songs, pop, punk, perfection. And these songs, like one by one, they get under my skin. They're like time-released little pop punk parasites in all the best ways possible. And track number 2, Time for You, is the best song AC/DC never wrote. Brings us up to number 5. And it's one of the obvious choices. And there were a lot of obvious choices that I didn't put in the top 10, and maybe I'll get to them at the end of this to talk about some honorable mentions. But there's no denying. Do I have this upside down? Yes, I do. It's Boy Genius's world. We just live in it. Lucy, Julian, Phoebe, separately, they're all awesome, but together, they come together like an indie rock Voltron. And this album, I dig it because it's fresh and familiar. The first couple of spins, my takeaway is side one is Teflon. It's all killer, no filler. Side two, and of course, I'm talking side one to side two. It's a CD, but 12 songs. So for me, I break it down side one, side two. The second half, it took me a while. It took me a while for some of these songs to grow on me. And I was on the fence about whether it would make the top 10, but what finally led me to include it in the top 10 was like, okay, I may not love all the songs now, but I eventually will. And it might just be a matter of minutes before I do. Which brings us to album number 4. There are many artists on this year's list who, with this year, marking, I can't speak. There's a lot of people on the list who are making their third appearance on one of my year-end top 10 lists. I became a huge fan of this artist with her second album. It's called Loner. It's one of my favorite album covers of all time. And the album itself is wall-to-wall electro pop bangers. That came out in 2018. Her 2020 follow-up, Superstar, is danceable AF. And based on that, I am a fan of Caroline Rose for life. I wasn't expecting to love the art of forgetting as much as I do. First couple of tracks were pre-released, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Not quite as upbeat as the last couple, but when you hear the songs all together, everything in context, what crystallizes is this is just a drop deadly gorgeous breakup album. And if Caroline Rose needs us there in her time of need, especially when they have been there for us over the past couple of years, just giving us just wonderful music to make us happy, I am happy as a fan to be there for her and go along with her on her journey through the valley of heartbreak. And it's not unlike the Lil Yachty album. This is an immersive listening experience. It's not immersive in the psychedelic way, but it's immersive in that we are wrapping ourselves up in the blanket that we wrap ourselves up in when we are getting through a heartache. And do not sleep on the interstitials. I know a lot of people sometimes put interludes on, maybe sketches, and a lot of times you're like, these are horrible. Why do they have them? Not the case here. The interstitials on this album are voicemails from Caroline's Meemaw. And it's so adorable because Meemaw's just checking in. She just wants to see if Caroline's doing okay and let her know that she's thinking about her. And it's just the ray of hope that lets you know that Caroline's going to be okay. And even sweeter is during the last song, off in the distance, you hear Caroline returning Meemaw's call and saying, yeah, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And it's just like, all is well. Our number 3 album of the year, a band just prolific AF, and a band I slept on for so many years, a band that I heard songs here and there and liked and, put them in the file marked. One of these days I need to check them out. And then last year, I got a chance to see the Mountain Goats right after they dropped the album Bleed Out, which was my number 2 album last year. And just, I love the Mountain Goats now. Got to see them twice over the past year. And so when Jenny from Thebes came out, let's see, do I have this in the, maybe I'll just continue to twirl it around. There we go. Have to make sure I'm holding it in the right direction. Jenny from Thebes is great because it is just chock full of these great story songs, chock full of characters that are just damaged and downright broken and sometimes just downright lovable. And when I'm reading the liner notes from this, I'm thinking, wow, John Darnielle of the Mountain Goats and Craig Finn of the Hold Steady are like kindred spirits because they write these songs just peppered with characters that just feel like they could be something out of an Elmore Leonard novel. Then I led to something which I could file under hot take that, well, if that's the case, then wouldn't John Darnielle and Craig Finn be kindred spirits with Steely Dan's Donald Fagen? And while you resist the urge to throw things at me, I'll just say that Bleed Out made me a fan for life, and Jenny from Thebes makes me really happy that I made that decision. We arrive now at number 2, and I knew this record was going to be in the top 10 before it came out because I went to see this person for the 3rd time last December, and they played 5 songs off this album that had yet to be released. Not just 5 songs, but the 5 songs from side 1. There I go again in that analog mindset. So, and on top of that, not only did they play the first 5 songs off of the album, they kicked off with the opening track. And there is something that a lot of artists forget to do, and that's how to kick off an album. Margot Price is not one of those. Been to the Mountain is the most awesome album opening track I've heard in a minute. She's one of the most electrifying live performers I've had the pleasure of seeing. And the songwriting here, as always, is top notch. She is one of the other artists who, with Strays, this is her 3rd time in our top 10 list. And I love everything about this record. Yeah, there's guests, Mike Campbell, Lucius, Sharon Van Etten, and those are nice to haves. But the real reason this album works is because Margot is a world-class, badass singer-songwriter and performer. Which brings us to our number 1. And I've had my list locked down for about 2 weeks. And right before I locked down that list, the album at number 1 was not in the list. There was another album in lieu of it. And I like this album. And I love this band. Best live act I saw in 2022, Force of Nature. And when I realized that I was not going to get to see Springsteen in 2022, getting to see Low Cut Connie live more than made up for it. Low Cut Connie, they at one time had a solid lineup, kind of was a fluid lineup of sorts, but the constant of Low Cut Connie is singer, songwriter, and pianist Adam Weiner. And the man is a force of nature live and just a brilliant singer, songwriter. And I've loved all of their stuff. This is their 3rd time in our top 10, first time topping the top 10. Art Dealers is their 7th record. It's dedicated to Lou Reed, and it's dedicated to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll era of New York when Lou Reed was in his heyday. And it's also influenced by the years that Adam Weiner spent as a piano player in the LGBT bars of New York. And when I was making my top 10 list and this album wasn't in there, and I'm like, I like this album, but I don't know if I love it. And I had another album ready to go. And when I was choosing songs to put in the podcast to represent each of my top 10 albums, I couldn't commit. I had this nagging in the back of my head of, Greenberg, you need to put that Low Cut Connie record on again. And I did. And before the end of the first track, I'm like, yeah, I think this is our number 1 record. And I let it play. And it was a Saturday night, so I guess it makes it all right. I realized in that moment, yeah, I was a fool. And sometimes I just need to get out of my own damn way and spend a little extra time. And then the secrets will reveal themselves like the tea leaves that tell the secrets of the universe. And that's why Low Cut Connie's Art Dealers is my number 1 album of the year. And with that, I drop the mic.
All right, let's wrap this thing up with talk back to everybody else's list or things that you want to shout out that didn't make your list.
I just remembered I bought Margot Price's memoir this year, and I haven't read it yet.
It's such a good book.
Looking forward to it.
I want you to read it.
I have so many books I haven't read. I love reading. I'm horrible about just being disciplined about it.
Yep.
I'm going to give a shout out to Scott Winchell for turning me on to Nick Cave's book, Faith, Hope, and Carnage. I'm working my way through it for the second time this year.
Man, and I totally oblivious to Nick Cave before that.
Same.
And it was an Instagram post by Flea talking about it. And he just said, I'm reading this book. And I don't know, I don't listen to Flea by any means. But something told me to go look at it, and I couldn't put it down. I'm glad we've found that. Goodness, that dude's nuts. And you got to see him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Nick Cave a bunch of times. He's great, but I'm not as big of a fan of the more recent Nick Cave as I am of like with the Bad Seeds, because to me, Bad Seeds are like the dark E Street band. You know, there's something that's kind of fun and deliciously evil.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that in in our messenger, and I think there is a new Bad Seeds album coming.
Oh, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, it's all it goes. One of the things that I keep going back on is, especially right now, this time of year, new music could quit being released today, and there would be enough music to be discovered that we have never known for a lifetime or two or three. And of course, we don't want that to happen. But, you know, I've gone all these years and never been Bad Seeds, Nick Cave, or anything. But now I've gotten into that a little more. Never too late to discover it.
Y'all are shouting out old people with new music. Not in my close to my top, but I have a humongous maximalist. I've got the new Bruce Coburn album. Ooh. Bruce Coburn is touring in his 80s.
Oh, he's
behind this album, Oh Sun, Oh Moon, Peter Case. And apparently a lot of people don't even remember Peter Case, but this album, Dr. Moan by Peter Case is absolutely amazing. Glenn Hansard has an album out called All That Was East Is West of Me Now. Of course, there's the Dolly Parton, of course, but I really wanted to give a shout out to also the Iris Dement's album that came out this year as well. So a lot of these kind of like old folk troubadours are still just knocking things out.
I'm with you. Dr. Moan's a great record, and for a while I was considering it for my top 10. Can I give a couple of like honorable mention shout outs?
Do it.
So, love this record early in the year. I make no apologies for it. Daisy Jones and the Six, Aurora. If loving an imaginary band is wrong, I don't want to be right. And do not sleep on the songwriting efforts of Blake Mills. I'm like, he alone pulled this thing off. The new Gaslight Anthem records, good. I consider this for the top 10, but it didn't. I'm like, and nothing wrong with any of these records. It all boils down to just the moment. Lydia Lovelace. I'm a huge fan of Lydia. She almost always makes my top 10. And sometimes I feel guilty when I feel like, oh, I love this artist, but I don't know if I want to put him in the top 10. So I feel like I have to send Lydia some an edible arrangement and say, I'm sorry, but I still think you're awesome. Wednesday. I was so close to putting Wednesday on the list. Chosen to Deserve is my favorite song of the year. And I love this band, but the honest truth is I don't love all the songs on this. I feel like one of these days I will get there, but I do have a lot of love for Wednesday, especially as a live band. And Isbell, I like it. I don't love it. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, just sometimes when somebody does great work all the time, you kind of, take it for granted. And I'm afraid that I might be one of those people, and I might have to send Jason Isbell an edible arrangement along with public.
Man,
You got to be
I
careful
gotta
with Jason. He might call you out on X. He likes
I
to
gotta, I got. Can I share a couple of funnies? One in the what Noah Kahan came up in the comments. I put he's an industry plant, and it's because people are like, where did he come from?
Yeah,
and
Everyone.
So
Exactly.
Noah Kahan. When I first learned of him earlier in this year, I thought I was kind of looking around and I noticed he's coming to town to Birmingham. And I thought, man, I wouldn't mind going to see him. You couldn't touch a ticket. And it's like, but the industry plant, a while back, my daughter was telling me how this group she was hanging out with in LA, so they were trying to convince her that Phoebe Bridgers was an industry plant. Planted by the industry. And so we kind of have an inside joke about that. Phoebe Bridgers and Noah Kahan are industry plants.
Well, maybe that'll be the name of their new side project.
Here's why. One of the things I love, I think Cast Iron Skillet's one of the best songs.
It's great. It's an awesome song. It's amongst his best.
Why that album came out, I went and bought it. And I loved it. And I'm like, this is all subjective. No one's right. No one's wrong. But I literally shared we were with some friends and they are heavy Isbell people. Watch what you say. And I was like, you know what? And remember, I came to Isbell probably 4 years ago. He was new to me. It was way post Southeastern. So I've been rediscovering things of him along the way. And I love it. That's just where I'm at. And I made the comment to my friends. I said, I like Weather Vanes better than Southeastern. And you would have thought that I said that Peter was better than Jesus. And it just, and that didn't go over well. And and so we're just, it's kind of laughing and it's funny and you can't, it's hard to have conversations, but man, Weather Vanes, the songwriting of it's really, really, really great. And sonically, those albums that he's been putting out, like Reunions and this one, they just sound awesome. They
I love Reunions
on good headphones.
Yeah.
I'll give some shout outs for, like we're saying, artists that consistently put out good music and it's just so consistently good. Why put it in your top 10? Because it's going to be good. Yeah. Like Queens of the Stone Age, their new album, great.
Yeah.
Foo Fighters' new album, awesome. Love Uncle Dave. He's always doing a good job. What else? Cracker Island by Gorillaz came out at the top of this year. I think I talked about the singles off of it in our talk last year, and that whole album is really cool and interesting.
And Blur had it too, and totally. I had problems keeping Paramore out of the top. That album was really good.
I have a couple that I thought of after my brain freeze thawed out. The Rihanna Giddens new album was really good. I love the jazz feel of it. I was surprised and drawn in by Unearthed by Hozier, which was a fascinating album. And it's a late release this year, but Sufjan, am I saying that right? Sufjan Stevens' Javelin is gorgeous and gripping. Almost.
Hosier's the ultimate industry plant.
Yeah, indeed he is.
Yeah, that Sufjan Stevens album wrecked me, Rick. It really destroyed me in a good way. And I don't know if you all know, he's not as well known as Sufjan, but he was very popular when Sufjan was more folk and he hadn't quite expanded so much into all the different sounds that he does. Bonnie Prince Billy put out a new record this year that is absolutely breathtaking, and he is so prolific and collaborates and has so many different super groups that he's in. I think one of Bonnie Prince Billy's super groups was one of my top records a couple of years ago, and the name is completely slipping me of the super group. But yeah, I mean, I just almost, it was hard for me to get out of the folk lane at all, because like I got onto Noah Kahan too, industry plant, whatever. But then I discovered, this guy called Evan Honer, who sounds a lot like Noah Kahan, who's absolutely incredible. And Rick,
it's pronounced Khan.
Is it?
Yes.
I've been saying Kahan.
Well, they've been announcing his upcoming appearance on SNL as Noah Khan. So,
all right.
Well, Tyler Childers is very important to Rick and me. If y'all have not yet listened to Logan Halstead, I cannot recommend this young man enough, out of West Virginia. It's just unbelievable. And he sounds just like Tyler. And Drayton Farley sounds just like Jason, and I don't care. They're both incredible.
Okay. Another artist, homegrown from North Carolina in the Raleigh area. They're called Boy Girl Rising. And they're a humorous queer folk duo, and they're just damn delightful. And I saw them at a day party at Hopscotch, and it was so fun because they have like an instantly rabid fan base, and they're all going Boy Girl Rising, and I'm like, with the clap, and I'm like, yeah, they're gonna rule the world someday.
Right, here's an album I would have sworn one of you would have put on your list. Kali Uchis Red Moon and Venus.
Never heard of it.
She's I would have done some research if I added her to my list, but it's very smooth, dancey, little South American Spanish language vibes. Very popular. It's on some of the lists of all time everywhere, people enjoying it.
This is why we need to talk more often, because I see people's names in blogs and stuff, and I just zoom past them.
Yeah.
So I need to hear you say these things, because that sounds like something I would dig.
Right. Yeah, I love it. That was one I heard on WNXP. So there you have it.
Nice.
That radio station.
You guys have cool radio stations where you live.
Yeah, that's they're a good one, because they play. It's not all one thing. And they're not, it's all new music. They're rarely going back and playing deep cuts. Hey, on the mispronunciation of artist names, full disclosure, for years I have walked around calling Sufjan Sufjan.
Yeah.
While we're at it, the brothers who lead the Kinks, Ray and Dave Davis, not Davies.
Really?
Yes.
I've never heard that.
I have, and it comes from the man himself.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. There's a million DJs out there.
Yeah, there are.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Pronunciation is everything.
Right.
I only just now discovered that you guys had a whole back channel going here, and I feel really out of it for missing it. I really am sorry I wasn't able to read the chat while we were going. And you guys were on here last year. I don't think I was in the chat last year either. It's a very helpful tool to this StreamYard. So, gang, I'm suggesting a monthly meeting, kind of like a book club. Some of the best music podcasts are out there are these music podcasts where they're like, we're going to go through like the entire SST catalog, or we're going to go through the entire, REM or Wilco catalog, or whatever. So one classic album per show that each of us take turns suggesting, and then all of us can like nerd out around that album. And then maybe at the end of the show, each time we can, and we'll maybe limit it to an hour instead of 2 hours. And then at the end of the show, each time we'll have it like a quick round robin round where people can just shout out new stuff that they're listening to.
That sounds so fun.
I did that. I kind of sort of did that in my last job. We had a record club, and we would like take like a half an hour out of the work day, like on a Friday afternoon, to talk about like some of our favorite records.
I'm going to suggest January 28th. I know that's a long way away, but I actually booked up the rest of my January. If y'all in for January 28th, Saturday, 2:00?
Yes.
Who wants to pick the first album? Amy, do you want to pick the first album?
Was that me volunteering? Sure.
All right. So let us know on the chat. So everybody, the music nerds. A year ago, Greenberg, you said, let's do this once a month. And we just let it kind of fall apart.
But we did chat in our chat all year. And that was so much fun.
It was so good.
I actually said we should do this like more often, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Let's do it. And maybe next year we can have a different format. But for this year, I'm suggesting one album a show, a 1 hour live stream where each of us nominate something that's out of our our album DNA, like in the the bricks and mortar, in the foundation of our musical existence. Kind of like remember when I got you guys to help me make a top 50 albums of all time a couple years ago that I gave my class, kind of like that. Yeah. All right, last time around the Zoom screen here for any more shout outs. I've got a few more if anybody else doesn't. But what else have we left off? Rick turned me onto this album called Saved by the Reverend Kristen Michael Hayter, who used to go by something else. And this thing is dark and weird, and it climbed out of the Harry Smith anthology. And keeping with that record, there's a couple other kind of weird. I would call them weird gospel that came out this year. And there's the Parchman Prison Prayer album, which is all recorded inside the Department of Corrections in Mississippi. And then Oh Me, Oh My by Lonnie Haley. I don't know how you can describe that album, but it's got a Michael Stipe guest on it. All three of those records are kind of eerie religious albums, with the Prison album being the most traditionally a gospel album. The Kristen Michael Hayter album seems to be getting a lot of people who don't listen to gospel listening to it. And because her background, Rick, do you know she was some other artist? She had a different name before.
Yes. And it's escaping me right now.
You shared that with me. I listened to it too. It was something else.
I felt like I was getting an exorcism through the earbuds.
I mean, it's kind of weird, some of that stuff. And who's the other lady that from Nashville, blonde hair, had one out a year or two ago? Kind of an odd. Her dad died.
That was the one you had told me about. It's Mercy was the title of the album.
This kind of reminded me in that genre, and I have to watch it with the dark religious stuff.
Yeah. So speaking of weird religious albums, and I slept on it when it came out, even though all my friends wanted me to listen to it, and somebody nagged me just the other day to try it again, and that's the Derek Webb album, The Jesus Hypothesis.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
is really interesting.
I have been rediscovering pop this year, and Olivia Rodrigo's album Guts could have easily made my list. That album is great. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. It's really well put together.
I gotta give that a chance.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
There's a lot of good pop out. We bought, I mean, the Taylor albums are really good. She's just in a different world, but yep, that's it. There was one last one I had was the jam band. They're called Goose. Man, they had
on Gus's.
Yeah, they had not Geese. This is Goose.
That's
And
different. Okay.
yeah, it's way different. It's a drip field, and it was really good. Just really vibey. Reminded me of like some good old Widespread Panic, you know.
Yeah, Goose is hugely popular. With I'm kind of jam band friendly, jam band adjacent, and Goose
Yeah.
people really like Goose.
Yeah, Goose rocked. That I had a hard time. One of the only reasons I didn't it didn't go a little higher, and I know this is a horrible excuse, but I kind of like owning the ones I really love, and I had a hard time finding a physical copy of it for a reasonable price.
Mhm.
All right, we've made it to 2 hours, y'all. This has been beautiful. Barring any natural disasters or meltdowns, Amy's going to pick a classic album out of her musical DNA, out of her musical formative lineage, and we'll all listen to it and discuss it on the 28th of January. And get your homework in. Type up your list, put it in the Google Doc, and put one song suggestion per album, and I'll get us a playlist made for everybody, and I'll make a big post about it. Everybody who listened, thank you. If you made it to the end of 2 hours, you're incredible. The music nerds, thank you. And fellow music nerds, let's do it again soon.
Good seeing y'all. Roll Tide.